T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Kush's Corner here on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Tonight, I'm joined by Randy Pegues of Stoic Arboreals for an in-depth talk on Amazon tree boas. Randy is working with some of the most incredible Amazon tree boas you will ever see, and it's a species that I've always been super fascinated by, but I've never kept them for one reason or another, so I'm definitely very excited to get into it tonight. But before we get into that, of course, as always, USARK. So USARK is the organization that is fighting for our rights to keep our reptiles, to run our reptile businesses, and to live this lifestyle. Check out usark.org for everything you need to know about the organization. That website is also where you can find alerts to new pieces of legislation introduced either at local levels or the national level, as well as any updates on any pieces of legislation. USARK.org is also where you can become a member of the organization. As a community, we have strength in numbers, and the more people that are behind the cause, the better. And here we are. Thank you to everybody who is tuned in, either live here on YouTube or anywhere after the fact. But if you are here on YouTube and you are not already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. New podcasts come out every single day of the week here on the Trap Talk Reptile Network from some of the best hosts in the game, talking about a wide variety of topics within the reptile industry. So if you are a reptile podcast fan, you have come to the right place. But if you're more like myself and are an audio person, we are on all the major platforms, be that Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the Trap Talk Reptile Network. A follow and a 5-star review on any of those platforms would be most appreciated. And for everything behind the scenes that is going on with me, my projects, the podcast, just the best way overall to support, go to patreon.com/CushReptile, where 50% of all membership fees immediately become credit towards the acquisition of a new animal. It also puts you at the top of the list for anything you may want. That credit also never expires. So once again, patreon.com/CushReptile. And I greatly appreciate everybody who is, for one, already part of the Patreon and everyone who just checks it out. So with all that said, let's bring Randy on to the show. What's going on, man? Thank you for being here with me tonight.
Hey, man, I appreciate you having me, Steven.
Yeah, absolutely. I've really been admiring your Amazons for quite some time now, so I'm excited to get to talk to you about them.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'm kind of obsessed, if you haven't noticed.
Yes, I have noticed. I know the feeling. So yeah, man, kind of to get into it, what's kind of your background in reptiles? Were you someone who kind of caught the bug really early? Did it catch you a little bit later on? How'd you get into this?
So, you know, being a young kid, you know, having allergies, you can't really have a lot of dogs and cats and stuff like that. So my mom told me, you know, when I was young that I can get pretty much whatever I want as long as it doesn't have hair and it's not a snake, you know. So I had tons of turtles and frogs and stuff like that growing up. You know, I was just fascinated about, you know, creatures, animals in general, just an animal person, you know. And then you kind of go through, you know, middle school, high school, you kind of lose that passion a little bit. And then I really picked it up after high school, just kind of looking around, just like, I want to do something different. And I like to always kind of explore my fears a little bit, right? I like to know kind of like why I'm scared of things. And then once I educate myself, I kind of like come to an understanding of the fear a little bit, and that kind of helps. But I didn't realize that I had such a deep rooted like passion in this fear that I thought I had at one time. So I started with ball pythons like most people do. Got ball pythons. I think it was like 2007, something like that. 2007, 2008, started getting some ball pythons, watching, you know, Snake Bikes TV, and that kind of really like, whoa, there's actually like a community behind this, you know. And Starting to talk to a lot of people on YouTube, because I had like a little YouTube channel back then. Like, it's much different than it is now. It's not all like, it's really showy and flashy. I didn't know how to edit or do anything like that. I just took a video and put it on there,
Yeah.
But I met some really good people on there, like Rob Christensen was one of the people I met back in the day, Jeremy Turgeon, some handful of people that, we all kind of talk through YouTube and stuff like that. And then started kind of exploring other species. I got like ball pythons, and then I got leopard geckos, and then I got, what did I get after that? Then I started getting in some green tree pythons. Okay. I had some monitor lizards, civilian monitors and stuff like that. Just kind of getting a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I had a couple Amazon tree boas back then, but nothing crazy, just some like Halloweens and stuff. Maybe a couple of yellows. And, you get to a point where you kind of like, hey, what am I doing here? What do I really like? Because eventually you start to just like, collect stuff over time. And it's like, no, I kind of want to be happy with what I have. And so I really enjoyed the green tree pythons at that time. So I started getting more and more green tree pythons. But my goal was to breed the ball pythons as well. I think it was like maybe 2011 that I bred the first snake that I bred was the green tree pythons.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I bred them first. And that one I actually was able to document on the YouTube channel too, to kind of, back then you didn't have as much information, we don't have like Greg Maxwell's book. I don't even think Justin's book came out yet. I don't even think that book was out at that time. And then talking to other people on YouTube and stuff like that, getting information back and forth. And I just made like a little igloo baiter, from like Damon Salces on albinochondro.com. I was kind of watching his stuff for a while, and okay. Got the first clutch, and green tree pythons, I was like, this is not as hard as people say it is, so I'll realize later on that that's just because it was those animals. I probably had 3 or 4 different clutches with green tree pythons.
Okay.
The first green tree python clutch that I had, I also produced ball pythons that year, and quickly realized that like green tree ball pythons were going to be something that like a lot of the morphs that I had too were like incomplete dominant. At the time we called them co-dominant. Yeah. And dominant stuff. And there's a couple of recessive traits that I had, but I was just like, man, how easy is it going to be for these people to just breed this species and just make more and more and more of these? I realized that early on. And so I was like, I just really like how green tree pythons like perch. When you go in the room, you can kind of see them all the time. So I fell in love with the chondros, man. And I sold like everything else, and I just focused on the green tree pythons, and I was breeding some dart frogs at the time. And really enjoyed doing that. Just kind of, hanging out, doing that thing. And then I had some relationship stuff. I was going through a divorce at that time, 2013, 14. So I decided, I was going to step back from the hobby and actually just sell everything, and I always tell people now that like, if you ever decide to like really downsize, like just keep like 1 pair or 2, just to still be able to, because you'll never get those animals back. You'll get the same species back, but you'll never get those animals back. And I didn't realize how, that Wamena male that I had, his name was Diablo, he bred everything. He bred the Jaipuras, the BX, everything that I threw at him. And I just didn't know much about it. I was just like, produce these little dark maroon ones, and some of them have orange triangles, and, we would all sell them for, I don't know, $400, $700, $1,000 at the most, nothing crazy. And so I was enjoying doing that, but once I was going through the divorce, it was just too much. So I kind of just started selling everything off, and I got really big into like reef keeping.
Okay.
Right? Doing like reef tanks, and that kind of like was scratching the itch a little bit. But overall, I still kind of kept my finger on the reptile community. And then when I met my now current wife, I think it was like 2017. It was like my birthday, and she's like, "What do you want? You're so hard to." And I was like, I don't care. I don't need stuff. I'm not like a person that like needs a whole bunch of stuff. And I said, yeah, it'd be cool if I had like a tree boa or something, green tree python. And so she went ahead and she got me one from Noah Ingram, and then it just spiraled out of control after that, like 2017. And I was just like, my goal was I want one animal from every top Amazon tree boa breeder in the country, And so that was my mission, is I wanted to get at least one from every single top breeder. And there wasn't a ton of breeders at the time, but, I was still like, hey, Rory, what do you got? Dayton, what do you got? Noah, what do you got? And I was just going after all of them, and started amassing that collection. And I did start dabbling with the Dominican red mountain boas as well. It's just something that like no one does that,
Sure.
And so like, yeah, I know they're messy and stuff. So, I want to kind of figure this out. So I bought some from a couple of breeders. I think Brad Chambers and Todd Appel and Chad over at Golden Coast in California. And I was just starting to raise those up. And, everyone's like, oh, they're kind of difficult to breed, kind of difficult to get established. Found someone in Florida who was just catching anoles. Him and his son, they would just go out and catch lizards. And then he would just ship me a box full of like 300 anoles, and he'd only charge me like, I think it was $1 a piece, So at the time I was just like, it just make it worthwhile with shipping, and that's kind of what you have to do, is just buy enough of them. So then I would just kind of freeze them off. And if you have anoles with Dominican red mountain boas, they're pretty easy, and they're super hardy. Like, they can go a long time without eating. They can go a long time without water. Like, they're very hardy species. As long as you feed them the correct meal, they're going to eat really easy. They're really shy at first. They don't like if you go in there with tongs and offer them anything, they're going to be spooked out and they're going to run. If you spray them, they're going to spooked out and they're going to run. So you just, thaw out an anole and you just leave it in there overnight and they take it.
Okay. That's convenient.
Yeah. They're actually pretty easy. They are a little messy. So, I tell people that like, what are you getting this for, right? If you're just getting it for a pet, you can actually, they're very tractable, right? When they're young, they're reluctant to bite. Once they start to go through sexual maturity, that's a different story, especially if you don't handle them often. They'll just like a rainbow boa kind of, they'll bite you if you give them the chance, but I don't really mess with mine much. So, okay. I just kind of hook them out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, they're really easy species. I kept them on, like, I do like a layer of peat moss, and then I put some cypress mulch over that.
Okay.
So what that did is it kind of acted like kitty litter. So when they had, because their musk is very thick and viscous, and it stinks, no snake musk smells good, but
yeah,
theirs has a unique smell. I think I remember you saying that you had some up there when you were up with the Fannings and stuff like that, right?
So I worked with some at the Wildlife Discovery Center in high school, and I've told the story a few times, but my most painful snake bite ever was from a Dominican.
Yeah, no, I could say they have a lot of power behind their bite, right? Like an Amazon, it has large, long teeth, but they don't have any power behind their
Yeah,
bite.
it's
You
kind of
know,
like,
they just fling their head at you. Yeah, but a Dominican, like they hit really hard, and then like you know how excited they are when they like let out this like hiss when they hit, and then they wrap up, and you can just like hear how tight they get.
yeah,
They have a really tight grip. So I mean, there's just a couple things to kind of keep in mind with them. When they're babies, they're going to be really ugly ducklings. And people are like, when do they go through that color change? And I'm like, you have to understand, it's going to take them like 3 years before they start to really go through it. They are super slow growing. Some people may have, but I don't think you can get them to breed younger than like 6.
okay,
Yeah. I don't think that's possible, because you can't really, at 4 years old, they just don't look like an adult snake. They're tiny still.
sure,
So at 6 years old, they finally got like, about 4 feet on them. And from there, I start to slow them down a little bit. Like, I think my biggest female, she's like a 2015, and she's probably just a little over 5 feet. She's
okay.
That thick around. She's pretty, but I've seen some massive ones too, and I'm just like, I don't know, like, I'm up here in the Northwest, so Nick Mutton and Ryan Young are gonna talk shit if I do that.
It's true.
Those guys for a long time. Yeah. Actually, I remember Nick coming up to me at one of the shows, and it was Ryan and Mark Goyer. I don't know if you know Mark.
Not personally, but I know Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, they all came up to me, and I think Sandro DePinto was with them, and then like Dayton Croydon, and they're just like, all these green tree pythons, you bred these? And I was like, yeah, here's the parents, and I got pictures and some videos, and they're like, no shit, because I guess I didn't know that everyone brings chondros to shows. They're all just flippers, but I was just like, well, I just want to get my name out there, so I wanted to start to go to some shows. So that's how I met all those guys. It was probably, I think my first show was that 2012 show.
Okay, cool.
In Oregon. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it was fun, man. The Northwest, it's a little bit slower up here, but we got some good people up here.
Yeah.
We're not as like active. Like, I've never been to any of the big shows just because I'm such a busy guy. I really want to go, but like I said, I have a few businesses. I own a construction company, and I own a painting company, and then I do the snakes, and then I have 5 kids, 3 boys, 2 girls. They all play sports, so it's always some season for something. So I just don't have, like, I love fishing too, fishing for salmon, like river fishing. It's like my thing, but I just haven't been able to do it. Just can't give myself enough time. So the snakes have really kind of filled that gap for me, that, I could just kind of pop over and take a look at my snakes and take them out and make sure they're clean and just kind of get away from reality for a little bit.
Sure. Definitely makes sense. Yeah. As a former child, the sports schedule is a nonstop constant. Yeah. So yeah, there's very little traveling to be done.
And my youngest daughter, she plays select soccer, so that's all year round. And then my wife was the head coach, so it's just like I never see them on the weekends, especially when they have tournaments.
Yeah.
So then I'm running all the other kids around. But just recently, my oldest son just got his license, so that is amazing. I'm like, you're taking all your brothers and sisters everywhere, dude. Like, that's just how it's gonna work. So,
hell yeah,
got stuff to do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, definitely.
So I kind of want to take it back a little bit and ask you about something you said very early on about you having a fear of snakes early on.
Yeah.
Clearly an animal guy, an animal kid, and also obviously someone who's very analytical. I can tell you think very heavily about everything you do. So when you kind of discovered that, where do you think that came from? especially considering you're not just somebody who's like weirded out by animals or whatnot. You liked other reptiles.
Yeah.
What do you think that was?
I mean, right. We kind of have these fears that are kind of like instilled into us at a young age, right? I mean, how much do you like spiders, you know? Right. And everyone has their thing that's like, to me, like a spider now, like I don't really care. Like my son collects tarantulas and it's not a big thing to me, but it's still not my thing. Like I don't want to hold one or anything like that. It's not my thing. And so like, you know, when I was younger, I remember like getting on like 3-wheelers and dirt bikes and stuff. And that kind of intimidated me until I started like really looking into it, learning how to ride, learning, you know, what to do, what not to do, all the gear, and just like going over that kind of stuff. And then you start to like, okay, you know, this actually started as a fear, but ended as a passion, you know? And so that turns the corner really fast. I think for the snakes, you know, society kind of deems them as like, you know, either evil if you're religious, or they're dirty or slimy or whatever, you know, and they'll just, they're all gonna bite you. And, you know, and I wasn't educated, you know, so I didn't know like which ones were venomous and so on. And, once you start to kind of educate yourself, you know, and I tell people the same thing with like, your local fauna, right? And you're going to be kind of intimidated when you go in the woods or you go in the forest or jungle or whatever, wherever you're at. And the animals that are there. But if you start to learn about them and learn about their behaviors, you start to understand that like, okay, most of the stuff is not going to like, it's not out there to get you. Right. And, if you learn like where they typically are, you know, you can kind of either avoid those areas if that's your thing, or if you want to see them, you can, you know, try to pursue those a little bit more. So I think that's where it came from. You know, my parents were pretty religious growing up, but they weren't like Catholic religion where they're, you know, it's like, oh, that's the devil, you know. They're just kind of like, oh, serpents are evil, you know, but
that's still not great.
Yeah. And so you kind of have to re-educate people, you know, because you get scared. You know, it's any animal that could be potentially dangerous that they're going to kind of be a little wary of at first. You know, you pick a shark up out of the water and hand it to someone, they're going to be kind of spooked at first, or anything like that. You know, that's just how it is. And for me, I kind of like to be scared. Like I have, you know, I can kind of tell in myself that I kind of like the adrenaline a little bit. When you start working with snakes, you may have that at first, but you know, that goes away so fast. Like if you're working with them often, that now people don't understand, like when the snake strikes at me and I don't even move, you know, for me, I'm just really calm. Like normally that's just kind of my demeanor. But I also want to make sure that these animals aren't going to get injured. And I realize that it's actually easier for them to injure themselves just by doing something stupid like that, you know, just pulling back. I mean, that's all it takes is ripping teeth out, and then becomes a, you know, stomatitis, and then, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like it just spirals. So you just kind of like, I'd rather get bit and just take the hit, and, you know, it's not a big deal after that. But yeah, man, that's kind of where the fear was, is just kind of society, religion, just being kind of taught like that. You know, I wasn't as educated is what it was.
Okay. And then once you kind of came to that realization, was it fairly easy for you to kind of get past that, or was it still a process?
Super easy. Yeah. Like, I mean, probably within the first couple months, like I still kind of had that like hesitation fear. But I was so enamored. I mean, I would try to do everything for this little ball python at first, you know, like you want the fogger in there, you want the little, you know, pond looking water dish, and, you know, you get all the cool stuff, the cool lighting. And, I just go in there all the time and just check it out, you know, kind of how people do with like fish. You know, you can sit in front of a fish tank and just stare at it forever. but the fish are constantly moving. But if you go in there at nighttime, like your snakes are going to be doing stuff too, you know? So it just depends. I like to really observe nature. I don't need to like touch everything all the time. I like to like just kind of see how things would happen without my interaction. I think that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like I've gotten more to that point of appreciating that as I've gotten a little bit older. When I was like a teenager, I just wanted to like interact with every animal that I thought was cool and stuff like that. And then, you know, looking back now, I'm like, man, I'm not sure I would do some of that stuff again. Like I'm naturally a very like you know, kind of cautious person.
Sure.
I wasn't that kid taking ridiculous risks and stuff like that.
I
Like,
was
I
just
would
saying,
my friends do that and be like, are you kidding? Like, why would you do that? Like, that's so stupid. But then like with that said, like, you know, I kind of resonated what you were saying about that fear also being a little intriguing. Like for me with the like getting that adrenaline a little bit, like with the scrub pythons, that was actually something that like took me a while to kind of get over, especially back when I was first getting into them. Everything you always heard is just how evil these heat-seeking missiles from the devil are. And I, you know, that wasn't necessarily what interested me about them, but it was almost like kind of like conquering that a little bit. So every time I like interacted with one that's like, you know, I've only dealt with yearlings. Now this is like a 7-footer I'm messing with. Like, how's this going to go?
Right.
You know, it would like kind of get me moving along a little bit. And now like there's entire days where I clean my adult room. I'm like, man, what were they talking about? Like I kind of sleptwalk, like I was like sleepwalking through this today, and everything, all the snakes were just kind of sitting there, and I'm like,
you get used to it. And I'll go back to like the same analogy of like a motorcycle. Like you get a motorcycle, you're intimidated at first, and then you get used to it, and then you get really comfortable on it, right? But if you ride somebody else's motorcycle, it kind of starts over again, right? You still understand it a little bit better, so you can pick it up a lot quicker. But you know, you still can get that little bit of adrenaline, fear, like, oh, okay, this bike, you know, this is a bigger bike than mine, or you know, this one handles differently, or it's heavier, or whatever. You know, it's kind of the same thing with snakes. You know, you can have a species and kind of really, you know, the Amazon tree boas, you're like, oh my gosh, they're gonna bite you, and it's like, are you kidding me? Like, come on, you know. I'd rather get bit by this than any of like a tokay gecko. You know what I mean? Like tokay geckos are crazy. Like I used to breed those too. They're just no thanks, you know? And that's, so, I mean,
makes a lot of sense.
All
right. So then kind of take it back forward a little bit. You know, obviously you've worked with quite a diversity of animals. So I've never done the like get out and get back in thing. So I'm always kind of curious when people do that, how they approached the rebuild, because I've kind of done rebuilds in place, but having the ability to start from scratch it's obviously a totally different thing. So considering everything that you had worked with, you know, you obviously pinpointed the species that you wanted to specialize in, but what was it about those species in particular that kind of put them above all the rest of what you had your experience with?
Sure. So, you know, I told you that I saw a trend with the ball pythons. Right. And I saw that early on. I also saw a trend with the green tree pythons, right? They're harder to breed, so people are not going to have as much success. But as we start to captive breed them more, people are going to produce them more and more frequently. And you know, I see the fads and the hype, and I don't really follow those kind of trends. I kind of look at everything overall, and I kind of watch where the crowds, you know, as a business owner, that's kind of how I am too, is I kind of watch the trends in the crowds, and I understand that, you know, pendulums swing one way and then they'll swing it the other way eventually. So I was like, okay, well, everyone's getting into ball pythons at one time, right? And then now it's like everyone's getting out of ball pythons, they're getting into a lot of arboreal species and, you know, unique species. But that was how everyone did it back in the day. They only had like onesies and twosies of like everything, you know, but now they want to specialize in whatever it is, you know, rainbow boas or, you know, whatever. And I saw that trend early on with the green tree pythons too. Like if you show like an average person's snakes, the green tree python is going to stand out to them. You know, it's just going to be like, and so I realized that like any new keeper coming into the game is also going to have that same kind of like,
sure,
like lure for them. You know, they're going to be like,
Me
okay,
too.
I want that next, you know? And so what I was doing is I was like, okay, but green tree pythons really are not for everybody. You know, like there's some people that like, yeah, you're going to get a whole collection of green tree pythons and we'll see how it works. You know, like you know, it's not as easy as you think it's going to be, you know,
Right.
like even if you get a few good seasons in there, there are going to be a couple seasons that are just going to kick you in the gut, you know, and that's going to separate the men from the boys, as they say. And so I was like, I want something that has a similar aesthetic to the green tree pythons that I love so much, but hardier and come in a lot of different colors. Stay fairly small, because I kind of also saw the trend with the larger species where the retics, the berms, and then also the large lizards. I was just like, I don't understand why people don't see this as unsustainable. You know, like I love all kinds of animals. I know there's only, you know, a small percentage of the people who own those. They could do justice by the way they keep them, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, a snake that's that big, it's just hard to kind of justify it in a box like that. You know, I tell people that, like, if you were to do a ratio, right, and you kind of told people that you kept an Amazon tree boa in like a 3x2x2, right? But then you have this, you know, 16-foot reticulated python in an 8-foot cage, right? It's the ratio, it's just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You know, it's like putting an adult Amazon tree boa in like a 15-quart tub, kind of. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how it is. And it's just like, you know, they're fine, right? I mean, they do their thing, whatever. They breathe, they go to the bathroom, they eat, their body weight looks fine.
Right.
Most of them, you know, some of them look super obese, but I just saw, I like to watch trends, and I see that stuff. And the Amazon tree boas, I'm like, that's something that, like, if you had just like a whole bunch of pictures of snakes and you show someone a red Amazon tree boa, right? Just a bright red Amazon tree boa, even if you don't like snakes, you're going to be like, what is that? You know? Or like a bicolor, you know, just like a clean bicolor, or Halloween, you know? And it's just like, yeah, I see the next trend, right? And that's kind of how I am, is like, okay, I see the next trend. And that's going to be people who are already into arboreal animals that, you know, they're either going to get into, and that's what it is, right? Someone has a collection full of green tree pythons. What do they want next? They're going to get an Amazon basin, or they're going to get northerns, right? Or they're going to get scrub python. They're going to get a white lip. They're going to get something else eventually, like just to kind of break up the monotony a little bit, you know? And, I've gone back and forth on that, because I got the Dominicans and I got some other stuff, but now I'm like, man, I think I only want Amazons again, you know, but I do have green tree pythons still, but they're at a buddy's house over in New Jersey. It's just kind of, I don't want to deal with these things. You can deal with them if you want, and breed them, and we'll figure it out from there. And they're doing fine. I'm doing fine over there. Got some babies that I'm raising up.
Cool.
And so we'll see. They'll probably eventually come here. I am working on a new like reptile shop right now. Okay. So yeah.
All right. Yeah, I definitely, that thought process is something that more people need to kind of utilize within the hobby. That, I mean, very similar for me with the scrub pythons, kind of seeing a hole in, you know, an area where there's a lot of demand, but yet a lot of issues,
right?
Firms, et cetera, something that kind of is underappreciated, but fits the need very well. Needs to be communicated to people. And I think with Amazons, that it's kind of always been a thing where, for as long as I've been in the hobby, people have kept and bred Amazon tree boas, and there's always been a community around it, but it never, until I feel like kind of recently it started to really kind of emerge as a market that more people are kind of looking to get into. And, you know, I guess what maybe the only thing you could kind of say as to maybe a reason why is that they often just sit in the defensive posture, and maybe that scares people away.
Yeah, and then also just kind of bringing them to light, right? Like Dayton and Rory, top Amazon tree boa breeders in the world, probably, you know, but they're very introverted. So, you know, and I'm somewhat introverted too, but as a business professional, that I kind of understand that you have to get your face out there, your name out there. Like I told you, man, like even for this, like I hate taking pictures of myself. Like it's just, I don't like it, you know?
Right.
So, but I realized that like, okay, I have to get my name out there. I have to get these animals out there, especially the animals. I have to just put these animals out there so that people could see them. So when I made my Instagram, that was one thing I wanted to do is, I don't care who you are. If you post an Amazon tree boa, I'm going to share it to my story, right? If I follow you and I see it, I'm going to share it, right? And that's showing people that there's all these other people in the world that also have interest in this animal, or they've taken nice pictures of them when they're in the wild, or, you know, they've produced something really cool. So I just started doing that, you know, and I just started doing that every day. I would just, you know, share stories of people's Amazon tree boas. I have a buddy that comes in and helps me take pictures of like my business stuff, and he would take some pictures of my snakes, and then I'd throw them on there too, and people like that. And I just kept sharing stuff, man. And I think that's what helped is like, you know, Jeff Godbold with Corrales Radio, that helped, I think, initially. Just kind of bring the people. Well, let's back up a little bit, right? Because there was the Amazon Alliance before that.
Okay.
But you had to, that was all forum based, right? So that was kind of stuff that like, I just kind of like lurked, you know, I didn't really want to involve myself with other people. I just wanted to learn, right? I didn't really care about friendships and stuff. I just wanted to learn. I mean, those happened later on.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Amazon Alliance, and then like Jeff Godbold with Corrales Radio, that really started bringing some people over to the Amazons. Like, okay, what is this? You know, and like showing some cool stuff. And then, you know, that's where I heard the name Rory Gresco, right? Is you know, he kept saying like, oh, I got this animal from Rory, and I got this one from, and I'm like, okay, well, this guy has some good stuff. I want to get it from him, you know?
Yeah.
And then, you know, Jeremy Turgeon starting to get into it. Rob Christensen used to have some when he was younger too. So he would post some stuff up. He really liked the really dark Halloween stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, Jeremy Turgeon started getting into it. My buddy Jacob Brooks got back into it. You know, just Keith McPeak has some amazing stuff. John Martin.
Yeah.
In fact, I have an animal from John. He's not doing so good medically. His health is really declining. So he had to kind of get rid of his whole collection. So he wanted to make sure, like, he sent everything to Keith. And then Keith kind of like distributed it out from there to make sure the animals got into people's hands that John wanted them to be in. And I was one of those people that John decided that, you know, I was like, wow, you know, that's so gracious that you guys are even allowing me to do that. So hopefully I can produce some cool stuff and show those guys what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, just meeting people along the way, just playing with the animals, just kind of finding that, you know, just watching people, you know, when you go to shows, there's always going to be like new people that walk through the doors. You know, we call them like zoo people because they take their kids to like those shows, and you know, they don't plan on like doing anything other than just like, oh, there's snakes here, you know. But just watching their reaction, like when they see specific animals, right? If they see a dart frog, right, they're going to be like, wow, look how bright that thing is. That's sick, you know. If they see a green tree python, they're going to say the same thing. If they see a red Amazon tree boa, they're going to see the same thing. An adult Brazilian rainbow boa, you know, it's like, okay, this makes sense to me. So I started like, okay, watching what people, and I'm like, people like small animals, right, that they can keep relatively in a smaller cage, right, and keep appropriately. Everyone wants to be able to like put all kinds of cool furniture and deck it out, right? Sticks and logs and all cool stuff. I mean, especially when you only have a handful or less.
Yeah.
You usually want to do that, And so I was like, okay, well, what goes well in, when I was doing like dart frog enclosures, and I was like, could you keep an Amazon in something like this, And so I would experiment a little bit, and yeah, I mean, the Amazons are pretty hardy, I mean, Amazons you can have just as many problems with Amazons as you do with green tree pythons.
Okay.
But the Amazons are typically a little bit more hardy, right? Yeah. If there's a problem with the Amazon, they usually can kind of come around. Sometimes the green tree pythons would just not, But, yeah, and then the green tree pythons are a little harder to get established, but I've had clutches that were easy. Up until probably last season, I would say Amazons are really easy to get started. I just feed them fuzzies, frozen thawed fuzzies, and they take like clockwork. I'll just cut a little slit on the frozen thawed fuzzy, kind of squeeze a little bit to get some brain juice out there, and I'll offer it that way. Dipped into really scalding hot water.
Yeah.
Usually always get them to eat that like that. But this year I had just a ton of runts. And I couldn't get at first, I couldn't even get 3/4 of them to eat. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah. I was like, do I just suck at this now? Or what is the deal? So I picked up some baby button quail.
Okay.
Yeah. That gets them going like that. The button quail, yeah, that is good. So it got a few of them to start, and then there was still a handful that didn't want anything to do with food. So what I started doing is cutting the heads off the button quail and then just sticking it in their mouth, right? Just stick it in their mouth, and they couldn't spit it out because it doesn't weigh enough. And then I would just do that once or twice, depending on the size of the snake, and kind of watch them grow from there. I've had a few come around recently. One that actually just shipped out this week. It was born last September, I think. I had to cis feed that snake for probably 3 months, but then it just took off. And then I have other ones that I'm still kind of messing with. And I've had one that I cis fed for 7 months, and then it took a fuzzy, and I go in there the next day and it regurgitated and died, it's just that's part of it, so you kind of hardened off to that stuff and realize that it's all part of, working with livestock and animals. You're either going to make more when you breed or less, that's kind of how it works, unfortunately. But that's the only time I really, lose animals. It's breeding season, right? If you stretch a male too thin, sometimes he won't recover. Or a female, maybe she doesn't bounce back, or maybe she gets kind of bound up, because Amazons are known to do that. And she retains everything. That could be a problem. I've also, worked with my vet. She's an equine vet. So she's traveling stuff. So she'll come over or I'll go to her barn or whatever. And, we've administered oxytocin and got some snakes to pass, and I still have those ones today. So it just really depends on the animal. But overall, I think the Amazons are a little hardier than the chondros for sure.
Sure. That makes sense. I feel like that's kind of always been the narrative around them. I've never worked with the Amazons, but I've worked with other Corrales, and, I feel like a lot of the issues that you can kind of run into with some of the other species of Corrales, you don't generally hear the same problems with the Amazons, especially when it comes to wild caught animals.
Yeah, and I think that's where we were getting most of our information. It was just all the imports that would come in, that's kind of how I started my Amazon collection. My wife got me one, and I just kept that one in my house. And then I actually had a little snake shed at my old house. And I was like, okay, I want to do this a specific way. So I hit up Cam over at Bushmaster and I said, I want to buy just a ton of Amazon tree boas, right? And he gave me a list and he's like, if you buy, 20, I'll give them to you for like 20 or $50 a piece or something like that. I mean, it's just like cheap, and like it's so cheap that I was like, Cam, do you even look at these things before you ship them out?
Like, nope.
And he's just like, where are you questioning? Like you can't really question that guy. He's just kind of like, oh yeah, yes sir, whatever. I'll pick the ticks off myself. No problem, sir. Thank you. And so like, there were some huge ticks and some mites and stuff. And but that I kind of anticipated that. So I wanted to get my imports first.
Yeah.
I got my imports first, picked the ones I want, resold everything else. And then I used that money to kind of put back into the hobby, so I can get more captive bred stuff.
Okay.
But I was able to establish those wild caught ones. And I figured, at that time that I can just, have some wild blood mixed in with some stuff that's already, captive and out there. That hopefully we can get some more vigor back into those bloodlines.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that's one of the things about Amazons that's so fantastic, not that we don't have access, like let's say with Northern Emeralds imports, but every breeder is so gun shy about introducing a wild caught to their collection, and rightfully so, that, the effective gene pool is just so limited, where with the Amazons, obviously goes without saying, quarantine, be cautious, etc. But, the ability to create these strong lineages kind of for the foreseeable future until anything changes, it's kind of unprecedented in the world of kind of boas these days, for being honest, overall.
Yeah, all boas, yeah, for sure. I mean, with these kind of snakes, right? Like to go into someone's room, like when we first started, I could see your cages behind you and you could see the snakes out. That's so cool to see. I had a problem with snakes that for some reason, if I don't see like head to neck definition, like they just resemble a worm to me, and I don't get it. It's just not my thing.
No sand boas for you? Yeah,
no sand boas. I'm not. No way. I don't like hog nose. Like I think they look disgusting. It's just not my thing, And so that I kind of like, okay, well, what do I like? And I figure like if it's something I like, people start to like feed off of your passion for those things.
Sure.
I could say, hey, I'm the only one in the world that likes Amazon tree boas, and eventually more people will start to like them just because like they're like, hey, I kind of like that too. I didn't realize I did, And they start to look into it. So I figured like, if I just show people like how much I truly enjoy keeping them and breeding them, that more people will kind of jump over to this side. And it's actually been really nice. I'm not a big breeder, right? I'll probably do like 3 to 6 pairings a year, hoping to get under 5 litters. I don't really want more than that just because I'm so busy.
A lot of babies.
Yeah, and that's it's good, that I can kind of put that money into the snake business and keep that money there and just buy more snake stuff with it. My wife, I always tease her because I'm like, that's my spending money. You don't need to worry about that money, when I want something, then I have that money to go get it, So that's the nice part of the snakes is it is actually I did create an LLC for it, so I can actually use it as a source of income if you're going to buy a new house or something like that.
Yeah.
But you don't get that immediate like money in your pocket. So
right.
It's different. It just depends on what you want. I always tell people don't go into business, grow into business, sell them under the table as long as you can until it starts to get to, if you can't just pocket a whole bunch of cash and you're putting a whole bunch of cells into your bank, then they can audit that eventually, and so you just kind of like, as a business owner with, construction and painting and stuff like that, like I've been audited by LNI, by the IRS, by DOR, I mean, it just like anyone who wants to audit you, they can audit you, right?
Yeah.
And so that kind of gives me like a little gun shy about doing that. So I always want to do it the right way. It's they said a while ago that if you put more than $600 in your bank account, they could see that. So I just tell people, like, just be smart about it. You're not going to really get in trouble unless you're putting a lot of money often in there. But if you can just do cash sales for a while and just enjoy the animals, and then just grow into it and just have a good time with it and don't go crazy, right? If I did 20 pairings a year, then it's just going to be too overwhelming for me. And the animals are not going to get the care they need, and it's going to reflect on my customers and the animals itself. And it's just like, the hobby doesn't need that. They just need people who are really interested in the animals that they're working with. And that way, I'm always here to help people too. If they get an animal from me, even if they don't, like, I have so many people reach out to me and look at this animal that I got. I'm like, oh, that's cool. What is it? Like, it just looks like a tricolor, man. Like, oh, okay, cool. They sold to me as this, and this. I'm like, nah, I don't know what those names are, but this is what I know, and maybe someone has a different opinion, but we're still trying to figure all the genetics and stuff out with the Amazons, but we're getting some of them down. We're getting some of them down.
Yeah, kind of back to what you said about that whole, just I don't want to say the sales strategy, but the marketing strategy of just being like, hey, I just really love these animals, and this is why, is in at least from what I've seen over time, so much more effective and sustainable than, look how much money you can make if you do what I do.
Yeah.
And it creates a market that is much more sustainable, and it also fosters a base of keepers that actually care about the animal that they're keeping, which you'd think should go hand in hand with what we do, and
it doesn't.
It doesn't always.
Yeah, people always want to get into it for the money, but if you just show them that, like, the reason that we started this hobby was, most of us started this hobby not because we're getting into business, but because we liked pet snakes. I got to remind Nick Mutton about that all the time. Oh, I can't believe he bred this to this. And I said, Nick, don't you have an English bulldog? Like, come on. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't just, this looks nothing like a dog in the wild. You know what I mean? Like, you pick the dog who can't breed by itself. Plus, it has like a deviated septum. It looks like it has Down syndrome and cerebral palsy and autism at the same time. It's just like, what are you talking? So when people are trying to make like hybrids and stuff, it's like, to me, it doesn't matter. Like, if the person is having a good time and they're doing that, and it's like, who gives a shit? Like, as long as they're saying like, hey, this is a so-and-so hybrid or whatever from this and this, like, I get it. Like, there's going to be people that are shady out there. There's always going to be people like that. Just do the best you can. Have a good time with it. Help as many people as you can. And just enjoy it, like, just don't worry about what other people say.
Yeah.
And that's really how I am. I don't care if people like me or not. I'm just going to do this, I just enjoy the Amazons, and it seems to be paying off, man. Like, I probably had a MORPHMARKET account for quite a few years, and I've never been able to post an animal online because they just sell so fast.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, the last show that I went to down in Oregon, the show promoter always tries to get me to go, but I'm like, dude, my animals, they sell really fast, which I'm not like complaining. That's a blessing, but I have to kind of hoard them. So last year I kind of like didn't post very much, and so I had like at least a full case of Amazons that I could take down there and show off, and it was cool, to be able to do that. But then after I posted those videos, I got wiped out. I got like wiped out. Like, I only have maybe a few yellows. Then I don't know if I want to sell those because they're kind of like a little niche project that I'm working on right now too. But yeah, that's it, man. I just sold out. Like, never, I use MORPHMARKET to ship all my stuff, but I've never posted anything on MORPHMARKET just because it just sells fast. People just reach out to me and they say, hey, what do you have? And I say this, this, and this. And then they say, well, you don't have what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this. And then I'll send them over. I've asked Vinny how many people I've sent up his way. And he's like, Randy, I don't want to sell anything either. Like, that's how it works, man. If you're into Amazon tree boas, to me, competition is viewed a little bit differently. Yeah, we're going to be competitive. We always want to be the best or better or whatever. But if I don't have something that someone's looking for, I'm going to help that customer go and get it, because I know that, like, hey, if they want a leopard tiger, right, a liger, and I don't have that, and okay, well, Dayton has some or Jacob Brooks has some. Those people that are going to get into the hobby are now set up for success, right? They're going to be like, Randy, help me. So I at least know one or two guys, right? If I send them to over someone, they're usually another good person.
Yeah.
And then they got the animal that they actually wanted, right? Because I don't like to do that, and people settle for an animal that's just available. It's like, nah, if you didn't come here for this, I don't want to sell this to you.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's help you find something. I do that all the time. People are like, oh, that's that Amazon cool, but I kind of like pythons, and I'm like, well, let me go take you over to this guy over here, and just hook those people up, and that's just how I do things. And so it's worked out for me. And yeah, that's about it.
Way to do it. I think we need to start a petition to get Nick Mutton to get like a pure gray wolf.
Yeah, I know. Get a pure coyote, right?
Oh man, but no, yeah, I always love when communities can kind of rally like that, where everyone's kind of supporting each other, sending business here and there, because especially looking from a customer standpoint, somebody comes to you looking for something, you don't have it, you send them somewhere, they have a great experience. That reflects maybe out of everyone best on you for having done your part to facilitate the experience for that person, and not just trying to take advantage for a sale. And I mean, if they're looking for something that you have in the future, you're the first person they're going to go to. So I think it's always refreshing to me when different sectors of the industry operate that way, because for the longest time, the largest, most influential sectors, the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Now look how that turned out for many of them. So, while in the short term it might seem gratifying, man, there are so many case studies now where it ends so badly for everybody.
Yep.
Not even just for like one person, like the entire market just, everyone who got in is like now kind of butthurt because they feel like they got sold and kind of tricked into something or whatever it may be. And I don't want to say like you grow resentment for the animals, because the animals didn't do anything, but like I've been turned off from keeping certain species because of how the people who are involved with those communities act.
Right.
Like I just don't feel like being involved with those types of people. And scrub pythons were kind of like that up front, where I had like a couple really bad experiences with somebody who was supposed to be like the guy.
Right.
I'm like, man, if I wasn't so obsessed with these snakes, like I might not try to get more involved, because this is how negative these people are who like them, all this fighting on groups and gatekeeping, and you can't get these and these. Like,
yeah, that's how the chondro people are, not most of them are really nice people, right? And a lot of them are my friends. But for the most part, I always hear from new people coming in, they're like, the chondro community is like elitist, and if you're in the community and people like you, it's kind of hard to see that at first, and it's kind of like, then you take a step back and you're like, okay, why are we telling everyone how much this snake costs? Like, why does that even matter? Like, okay, because this snake is $10,000 or this is $20,000. Like, if it's a pretty looking snake, it's a pretty looking snake, right? It doesn't. So, I saw that part of it too. And I just wanted to make sure that the Amazon community was kind of like, hey, let's just all kind of watch out for each other. Like I said, I have a business mind. So the old cutthroat way of construction was all your competitors were enemies.
Yeah. When
I got into construction, I reached out to all my competitors and I invited them to lunch. And I said, we're gonna talk, and we're gonna talk about pricing openly, right? Because we're all going to be competitive with each other. When there's a problem, we're going to send, this way we establish kind of, hey, who are the guys, right? And now if I'm too busy, I could send him over to this person. I feel that he's going to be taken care of. It's the same thing with the snakes. And what you do is you start to build that respect with your competitors, and it turns into a friendship, and you start to build that reputation that way, just one referral at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely can appreciate that. And the chondro community has gained its reputation, but I think there's a lot to be taken away from, elitist. Sure, I'll definitely agree with that. But then there's a level of kind of professionalism and how they track their records, the lineages.
No, it's great.
It's fantastic. I think it should be implemented in more aspects of the hobby.
I never experienced that really, so at first it was kind of hard for me to see that. But it is a trend. Like if you talk to newer keepers who don't have a name in the community, that's typically what they say. Right. And it's like, I don't understand, because they're all, I treat them with respect. They treat me with respect. I've never had a problem with any of them. Yeah. There was one chondro breeder that him and I kind of, and if people know me, my personality, it's like, if you pissed Randy off, you did something bad, because he's so easygoing. Like, that's just how I am, like, I don't really care, like, you're trying to fight me or try to do all this, like, I'm just going to walk away until you touch me. You know what I mean? So that's like if you did something to me, and I'm upset, then you probably did something, because I don't really get like that. And if someone does piss me off, I just ignore it, and walk away. That's just kind of how I am. Yeah. The chondro community has always been welcoming with open arms.
Yeah, me too.
I've never had a problem with that. They've always been really accommodating to me. But that's just what I hear, kind of word on the street.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I can understand from a new person's standpoint as well, kind of how it might seem that way. So it makes a lot of sense. We're going to hit the commercial break real quick.
Perfect.
So, okay, good. All right, everybody, sit tight. We will be back in just a few minutes.
Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Shout out to tonight's sponsor brought to you by ZooMed.
ZooMed is proud to be supporting the Trap Talk Reptile Network. At ZooMed, reptiles are our passion. For over 48 years, we've been creating premium foods, supplies, and habitats for reptiles and other exotic animals. We're a company made up of hobbyists that test our products on the hundreds of animals that we care for here every single day. Whether you're an established breeder or a first-time hobbyist picking up your first ball python, ZooMed has you covered with everything you need to keep your animals happy and healthy.
I'm excited to talk about this new product with ZooMed called the Slither Sense. It is a remote temperature and humidifying monitoring system, which we all know how important temperature and humidity is to your reptile. And for you to have remote access to your temperature and your humidity in your reptile room could really, really be a game changer for the longevity of you keeping reptiles. So guys, make sure you check out that product. Find the link in the description below. Click on it right now. Give me your feedback in the comments below. Let me know how you're liking a brand new ZooMed product. Shout out to tonight's sponsor, Workshop Reptilium. Josh Hansen is doing things different over in his facility. He has one of the most diverse, beautiful reptile collections currently in the reptile hobby today, but he is doing things differently when it comes to enclosures, thinking outside the box, giving these reptiles bigger enclosures. I feel like it's something this hobby needs. So a lot of exciting stuff to come from Workshop Reptilium. I'm going to be flying up to his place to give you guys a deeper look into his facility. And I'm also excited to have an episode with Josh so he can explain himself where his goals are headed when it comes to keeping. Thank you so much, Josh Hansen over at Workshop Reptilium. Make sure you head over to Instagram. Make sure you head over to Facebook. Also, make sure you subscribe to him on YouTube. You can find all the links in the description below. Again, thank you so much, Josh, over at Workshop Reptilium. Shout out to tonight's sponsor, and that's the one and only MORPH Market and MORPH Market shipping. One of the biggest exciting things about the reptile hobby over the past couple years is MORPH Market shipping taking everything to the next level. Anything as far as reptile purchasing or selling needs can all be done on MORPH Market's website. So I highly suggest you go check it out, especially if you're in the market of purchasing your first, second, or third, or fourth reptile. You can find a bunch of legitimate breeders on MORPH Market's platforms. They stand very tall on representing the best breeders we have in the hobby. So don't look anywhere else when it comes to looking for your new reptile. Not to mention, if you're looking for aquatics or your next plant, Morph Market's a spot for you as well. Make sure you head over to morphmarket.com. And the best thing about Morph Market's platform, you could ship directly from their website with Morph Market shipping. Morph Market shipping has saved this hobby millions of dollars as a whole. I myself saved thousands with Morph Market shipping last year due to their insanely cheap rates. So definitely go take advantage of these rates on top of the amazing customer service that comes along with Morph Market shipping. Shout out to Darian and Zach, and shout out to the entire Morph Market team. So proud to be a part of this team. Thank you so much for Morph Market shipping and Morph Market, and so excited to announce new Morph Market features that are going to be hitting the reptile hobby real soon, like live sales on Morph Market. Thank you so much, Morph Market and Morph Market shipping.
Alrighty, everybody, we are back. So I kind of want to get into how you built your group up. You know, you said when you got back into it, you wanted to get animals from all of these different breeders. Did you have different morphs, lineages, appearances you were going for, or was your goal up front also with getting those wild caughts to just build a very diverse group of Amazons and then kind of build your own thing from there? What was your approach?
Yeah, I think originally I just wanted diversity, right? I wanted a little bit of everything, but I knew what was striking to me and pretty much anyone who walked by was the reds, right? Calicos, red.
Yeah.
That was just kind of like stood out. So I was like, I want to get quite a few red calicos and then just kind of see what else is out there. I love calico tigers. Like, it's just, you know, some people are like, they don't like the stripes or whatever, but for me, I could put a stripe on everything and I like it.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, I think it looks that much cooler. So I like tiger. I was getting tiger stuff, calico stuff, Halloween stuff. A lot of my wild caught stuff was garden and Halloween females. And from there, I was kind of like, okay, what else do I want? You know, do I want to go the hypoleucistic route? Do I want to go the leopard route? So I was kind of looking into it, and I was kind of just, like I said, watching trends with everything else. And it's like, you know, what happens to all white snakes eventually, you know, is they kind of hit a stopping point, right? You make an all white snake. Cool. You know, what do you do from there?
Yeah.
And so that kind of turned me off of the leucistics. Like, I would love to have an all white snake in my collection, but at the same time, I'm like, I like yellows. I'm just not super fond of the yellows, but the pure yellows are cool. You know, like no black on them. Like, that is cool. But I was just kind of like, it's not my thing. And then I was looking at the leopards and I was like, you know, is it just a cool looking garden? You know, like at first I didn't see it, you know, and then I started to see some of the ligers and I was like, okay, that's freaking cool, right? A leopard tiger. Like I said, you put a stripe on that thing and I fall in love with it. So I wanted to get some leopard stuff. Yeah, actually I have a female that I'm raising up for Marshall. That's, it looks like calico het leopard female. They got some stuff from Dayton.
Would that animal from Marshall happen to be on your Instagram?
I don't know if I've posted her in a while. Probably.
This might be an easier way to take a look at it, because I have your Instagram pulled up here to take a look at some of these Amazons as we go.
Yeah. The one from Marshall. I would say, yeah, scroll down a little bit more. Right there in the middle of the monitor lizard, I think.
This one?
That one's from Godbold. That one's from Godbold.
Okay.
Scroll down a little bit more, and there's going to be like an orange-colored snake on the leopard tiger. A little bit more. Do we pass it? Yeah, actually, I think you passed it. Go up a little bit.
Going back up. If you were listening to the audio version, I would recommend checking out the video right now because we're looking at some awesome snakes.
Okay, yeah, actually right there. You see there's an orange kind of calico snake with the leopard tiger behind it. Yeah, okay. Those are my two females. Gotcha. So, yeah, so that top one is from Marshall.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's it. We didn't know what it was at first. We thought maybe it was just going to be like a tricolor het leopard. But, sometimes the calico does a little bit different things, right? Because you can have a homozygous calico and it's obvious. Sometimes I think there's a little bit of an influence of the calico with the heterozygous animals as well. And so my male that I called Hellboy, it was a red tiger. He looked like a really nice, like tricolor tiger, but was more red than anything. Kind of an orangish colored head.
Is he on here?
Yeah, he's at the top. I believe he was my profile picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, does
So yeah,
flip your story. I don't usually use the computer, but okay.
But yeah, that snake, I couldn't figure out what it was at first, and breeding it to a calico, I realized that it is het calico. I wouldn't call that. If a snake has an orange head, yellow head with a red body, typically they are not calico, but they could carry at least one copy of that gene.
Okay.
Yeah, especially if they start to have some modeling on them and stuff like that. Yeah, there's Hellboy right there. I think when I'm holding him. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. There it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So that animal, there's a lot of like white in that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he would throw lots of calico stuff when paired with the calico, but he himself is not calico. I would consider him a tricolor tiger het calico.
Okay.
Yeah. And so sometimes the calico, sometimes the genes kind of like influence even on the hets, like Dayton started producing some like het leopard stuff into colored animals, and you're like, that doesn't look like a normal tricolor, or that doesn't look like a normal tiger. What's going on? And he's like, I think it's the het leopard influence. And so we're starting to see some of that stuff too. Now we're actually like reverse engineering some of these mutations, and people are like, well, how do you not understand it? I'm like, you guys have to understand with Amazons, it's like you're taking an animal that may have like 6 genes in it, breeding it to another animal that has 4, 5, 6 genes, and you're trying to figure out what happened, Yeah. Yeah. We don't really know everything yet. And so we're trying to like take the animals that look similar phenotypically, and then we're combining those ones to kind of concentrate and isolate those genes from there, and then breed them back into, people are like, well, what is a normal Amazon tree boa? And so, a lot of people are like, well, the normals are got to be the gardens and the Halloweens, because they're just the most common. And some people think they're ugly, and I'm like, it's not, it's like a yellow or a tricolor is a normal Amazon. Because garden is so prolific in the wild, because why wouldn't a dark colored snake, do really well in the jungle? Yeah. So that recessive trait has passed on to so many animals that most animals that are pulled from the wild are going to they're going to be het garden.
Okay.
Yep. So that's kind of what we started seeing there is like, a lot of species have like, exanthism or anathoristic wild counterparts, right? And so I think that's what we're kind of seeing there. I know I was talking to Nick about that, and he doesn't think it's either of those, but I think it's exanthic. But we'll see, who knows? I do think it's exanthic. I think it's a recessive trait. You do learn that once you breed like a Halloween garden into, let's say, a yellow that's been line bred for, the leucistic stuff. You don't produce, what you get from there is you pretty much just get like double hets, you don't get any Halloween stuff at all. So we started realizing that like, okay, we're watching these patterns. Some people were starting to document stuff. There's a lot more to the Amazons than people think. I always tried to figure out like, and we're still trying to figure out too, like, is calico just allelic with red or can you separate it? are all calicos red? And we're starting to see other animals that resemble calicos that are not red, but we can't call them calico yet. That work hasn't been done. That's one of the yellow projects that I'm working on, is trying to figure that. In fact, I know Pat was in the comments. I think I have one of his females in that that mix too, and hopefully she goes this year. She didn't go last year for me, but we're trying to figure it out, like, because I tell everyone, I'm like, if this animal right here with all the modeled pattern on all over it, if this animal was red, it'd be considered a calico. But because it's yellow, it's not. Just considered a yellow, right? Got it. And so it's like, okay, well, let's breed them together and see what we get. And so we're trying to raise some of those babies up and see what's going on. And then we will try to separate it and breed it into calico and see what we get from there. And then breed them into a normal that we know is unrelated. So it's going to take quite a bit of time before any of that stuff's figured out. But if multiple people are doing it, I know Rory doesn't talk about it, but the last time he was on a podcast with me, we talked about the potential of like him working with like some orange animals that are, they probably can be calico as well. And orange is a weird one because it's like, when I talked about like the recessive, like red is definitely recessive for sure. Like Nick and Dayton put the time in on that. Like Dayton did all the legwork on that one. And so red is definitely recessive. But do the hets, right? If a het red, if it's yellow and it's het red, sometimes they can almost look like an orange color, And it's like, is it like expressing some of this somehow? Like we don't really know that part of it yet. So that's why I like them, is because, there's so many unanswered questions. And I'm the type of person that I like to ask a ton of questions. That's how I learn. So we all bounce stuff off each other all the time. If there's a cool animal, we always talk behind closed doors. Oh, what do you think this is? And how'd this happen? And, anytime I don't get wild caught animals now, but, there was an importer in Florida that he'd always reach out to a handful of guys and, hey, look what I got, everyone knows that importer, but a lot of people had some really rough times with him, but I don't know what it was, but he treated me with respect. I'd be like, hey dude, like these animals came in, they don't look good at all. All right, man, keep those ones. I'll send you some new ones. Okay, cool. And then I'd be like, hey dude, this animal looks like it's like wasting away. Like this is a picture of what you sent to me. And he's like, all right, well, let me know how it does. All right, a week later, passed away. He's like, I'll replace it for you. Like, So for me, I'm just like, I don't know. Like, for 1 year for Christmas, I was buying some animals from him, and I was talking to him, and he's like, didn't you say your wife wants a green tree monitor? And I'm like, yeah, but we're probably gonna probably do like a Molinas monitor. They're a little cheaper. I really like the color of them. And he's like, all right, well, no problem. So I bought a Molinas monitor and some other stuff. And, I opened the package and there was a baby green tree monitor in there. And he said, tell your wife Merry Christmas. So like, that's how I was treated by that guy.
Hey,
and so
you're the lucky one.
I don't know why though. You know what I mean? I was just like, I don't understand. Cause like when I question him, no problem. Okay. Yeah, sure. I'll take care of you. Cool. Maybe it's because I knew people, right? I don't know if like maybe he knew people that knew me or vice versa or whatever. But yeah, from the beginning, man, he always took care of me. He always just, he'd always show me the cool new shit that came in or whatever. And yeah. So like when I hear like, oh man, I bought animals from this importer and then, they screwed me over and this is what they did. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, are you kidding me? I mean, I even reached out to him a couple times. I'm like, hey man, this is also my friend. I hope you can take care of him. And usually he would, you know? So I don't know if I just treat people the way I want to be treated, you know? And
I think it was just how direct you were. I think a lot of the people who ended up getting fucked over would kind of like pussyfoot into like an altercation.
yeah, and I don't do that.
And they're like, oh, he's like, oh, you're weak. I'm gonna shit on you now. What the fuck are you gonna do? And as soon as someone's like, hey, what the fuck? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'll make it right. So yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, well, and I'm not like, you know, I just come at him like
harsh, but just like
direct. Exactly.
Direct. He's like, oh, I can fuck with you. If someone was direct, he's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly how it was, you know, and treated me with respect. And, you know, after a while, you don't really want to mess with imports, you know, after you kind of like get your collection established. So I haven't talked to him in a really long time, but, you know, even when he was kind of, you know, he got caught, he got bit, like I talked to him, and when he got, you know, like arrested for all that shit. And I was like, dude, are you all right? You know? And he's like, yeah, man, everything's working out. It's just people are making a bigger deal than it is. And then he just kind of like went away, and I don't know what he's doing now, you know, but none of my business. But like I said, like I only can give people my experience, and it wasn't really bad.
Yeah. No, I mean, you know, I think the thing about that situation that a lot of us have to acknowledge is like a lot of our great founder animals for some of our collections came through that guy.
Yeah.
And, you know,
like Forrest too, right? Like he'd always treat Forrest the same way.
Yeah, very, very much. You know, there was a lot of shenanigans, and, but, you know, it kind of balanced itself out at the end of the day. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, some of my best scrub pythons that I was, you know, getting early on, some of the animals that produced my first clutches, that's where they came from. So, you know, it is what it is. It's a part of the history of the 2010s in the reptile world.
That's very true.
If you're working with anything that's a little bit offshoot, you had to get imports. Yeah. There was no way around it. There wasn't.
Well, I mean, I would either go through Cam, or I'd go through Harlan, or I'd go through guy in Florida, you know?
Florida man.
And it's just like, I know most of those guys are getting it from Cam, or they're getting it from, you know, the dealer down. Yeah, strictly, you know? And it's just like, sometimes I would have a better chance getting it from Florida guy than just going through Cam, because he was kind of a dick, you know? I was like, I had more, like, I remember Cam one time, you know, I was like, hey, Cam, the package never came. What the hell are you talking about? I sent it to the address you gave me. Did you confirm? And I'm like, yeah. And he looked back and he's like, oh, you did? Oh, shit, I sent it to your old house. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll go over there and figure it out. You know?
It's like knocking the door. Hey, so you bought this house from me. Yes. You got a package. Did you open it? Because I hope you didn't.
Yep. Yeah, and luckily it was just like right on their porch, and I just snatched it up, you know. But yeah, I was like, dude. He's like, well, if any of them, you know, didn't make it, he's like, that's my fault. I'll replace them. But you know, I for the most part, like I didn't have horrible experiences with those guys. Yeah, and so that's kind of how some of my animals started. You know, just doing that, and yeah, just kind of finding. But yeah, the red calico stuff, you can't beat that, man. Like that's really what I really started with, and just trying to figure out, like, I really like the really dark, crazy looking calicos, and the extreme calicos. So that's kind of what I was going for.
I'm gonna pull this back up. Help me find one of like what you would think is like the absolute top of like what you're shooting for within your collection, like exemplary individual.
Yeah. So scroll down just a little bit.
Okay.
And so the those snakes right there, scroll up just a little bit, scroll up. Yeah, so a lot of these animals in this area, so at the bottom middle there, that's a calico tiger from Jeremy Turgeon.
Oh my God.
That snake is amazing. I think there was 5 snakes in that litter. It was just like a freak, amazing litter. I think Jeremy held one. I got one. Brandon Christ got one. Jeff Godbold got one. And then Brian Barczyk got one.
Okay.
Like it was just us 5 that had one from that litter.
Yeah. Jeez.
And so I really like the crazy extreme calico look. And
Yeah.
we're trying to, no one really knows how to, like, unless you just do extreme to extreme, like, how does that just all of a sudden pop out, you know? So
Yeah.
like, I kind of want to play with that a little bit. And then if you go back, scroll up just a little bit, actually right next to it, down on the side, right? Yeah. Other side.
Right. Okay.
That animal is from John Martin, and that's another calico tiger. And you can see the difference in it, right? Red eyes, but it has all this like purpley lavender colors and black and gray, and then white scales, and then it'll have like red scales scattered throughout.
There's a lot going on with that snake. My God.
Yeah. So that's my snake. I call her Static, and she's paired up with my male Freak Show right now, which is probably like where a lot of people kind of started following me was Freak Show. He's the really like white looking one.
Is he this right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see why. I mean,
yeah,
that's find me another snake, like an individual of a different species that can look like. I mean, I guess honestly, you could look at that like calico Dominican red mountain boa, like you know, comparable to an extent.
Yeah,
that thing is.
I actually looked at buying those. There's that trio. I remember talking to Abby Mulvastudo about it, and she's like, "Yeah, I can hook you up with the guy, but he's gonna want. I think he wanted 20 grand for the pair, the trio.
Yeah,
and they ultimately didn't end up making it. But I was like, I don't have that kind of money for snakes, you know, and you know, I see some of the calico stuff now, the Dominicans, and I'm like, it's cool. It just doesn't do it for me like those classic ones did. And I've never seen it since, you know. And it's almost like, is that because they're like the calicos now are more like the pastels, right? They're kind of that standard, like old school, what they call Haitian boa look.
Okay.
And the ones that Bob had were maybe more of like a brighter red variety. Same species, actually. We've realized that the Haitian boas and the Dominicans are actually same species.
Really?
Yep, and they're not found. They're found throughout the whole island of Hispaniola. It's not like, oh, in the mountains here they're all red, and then everywhere else they're brown. It's like if you go on iNaturalist, you'll actually see people that, you know, are not really snake people, but they're posting where they're finding these animals, and you can see a smorgasbord of all the different phenotypes there on Hispaniola. Okay.
I mean, I guess that makes sense ultimately. You know, if there wasn't enough kind of divergence there to speciate those two, they're on the same island. So
they're on the same island. Yep.
Okay. And there's no like geographic barrier. If you look at all the points plotted on the map, it's not like, oh, here's a very, you know, clear divide where you're not seeing them. And
yeah, I mean, there are some mountain ranges and stuff, and so that's what I was kind of looking at first when I was on iNaturalist. But then you find random of the, you know, the Haitian style phenotype up in the mountains, and then you find some of the red ones down in the lower area too. And so it's like, okay, I mean, maybe they're one-offs and it's just a random picture, but if you see how many people have been posting now, you're like, no, it looks like it's just kind of all over. So like, instead of calling them Dominican red mountain boas or Haitian boas, we should just call them Hispaniolan boas. You know, like I think that's the better term. I know Colin up at Reptile Barn in Alaska, he was really trying to push them for a while. But I don't think he had any luck breeding. I sent a couple up to him and tried to walk him through it a little bit, but he just couldn't find. They breed no problem. Just some people can't get them to go, I guess, you know. And it could just be the pair that he has. But mine went like clockwork. Like if I paired them up beginning of the season, which is typically like January for them.
Okay.
You know, I would see them breeding hard by, you know, March, right? Yeah. Like I just make sure that, you know, when anyone is breeding animals, snakes, I just tell them, I'm like, if you don't know what you're doing, man, like kind of understand the general time when most people are breeding those species here, right? And if you don't have a lot of information, the best thing that you can do is put some food to your female and pair the animals up and separate them to feed. Continue to do that until they breed. It's like, even if you don't know about cycling, even if you don't know about anything else, if you push food to the female and you keep them, while they're breeding, a little cooler temps, you pair them and separate them, pair them, separate them, pair them. If you do that throughout the year, eventually they'll go. Because I know I'm stubborn, and sometimes I'm like, I want this pair to go. I know I have these other females already, but I want this pair to go. So I'll just keep them together, and I'll just do that. I'll either be careful and feed them both together in the cage, or I'll separate the male out when I know he's going to feed and then put him back in a couple of days later.
Yeah.
And I'll just keep repeating that, especially if it's a male that, like, I've had, Hellboy actually passed away on me,
sorry.
Which kind of like, just like a gut wrench, because I love that snake. But that's what happened, is he didn't bounce back after the last breeding, and I didn't like catch it right away. So I had him, feeding again. And then I put him in with another female, and I was like, oh man, is he getting skinny? Like, what's going on? So then I pull him, and I'm like, okay, like, his season's off. Like, he is looking super lethargic, and he's really thin. And I didn't realize how thin he was, because he was always on the girls. Like, he was a good breeder. And so, like, that's some of the stuff that can happen with breeding, is you just have to really try to be observant to things. And, shit like that can happen. And you just, I know how I am. Like, you're going to blame yourself for everything. So it's just, that's how we are. That's just like, what could I have done differently? How could I have avoided this? What things am I going to change going forward? Which is good to make sure that you're adapting to those failures, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's how success is built. It's not built on success; it's built on failures, and just being able to ride it out, right? Not quitting, right? And that's how a lot of people that are in business, they'll tell you that, like, the only thing that's separating me from the people that failed was I just kept going, right? And that's what I do, right? And if I have a bad year, it sucks, and I just chalk it up. Like, I don't know what's going to happen this year, because last year I moved into this new property that I got.
Okay.
And then I have my snakes in my house, which are in, like, the office right now. There's no door on that, so I had to put, like, one of those, like, flaps for, like, if you're going into, like, a freezer or something like that, So I put them there, and it actually works really good. So they're just in there doing their thing, but I'm working on my well house, which will be their like shop pretty much. And so I'm going to move them again, and so I'm like, I probably won't get a good season, but hopefully everything will kind of balance out after that, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny. I have the exact same kind of room set up in my house, of like a little office alcove that doesn't have a door on it. I use the heat insulating curtains. Yeah. It's worked. So.
That's exactly. I was just kind of like, I mean, it keeps the temperatures in one side or the other when you go to, cooler or something like that. So I'm like, it actually worked. Like, in the winter, it got pretty cold out, and in the room, it stayed 77 or whatever, so it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. So then I guess at this point, what do you see as some of the next steps forward for Amazons as a whole from, like, a project standpoint?
So what's cool about Amazons is because you kind of get the best of both worlds, right? You get an arboreal snake, right? That's going to be out a lot. They're very active at night.
Yeah.
Unlike green tree pythons and emeralds, because I do like those species, which can get a little bit boring because they're typically going to stay in the same spot all the time, right? In Amazon, you come in the next day, right, and they're all draped all over the place, or they're hidden underneath this, or they're up over here, or they're, like, they're going to be all over the place. So I like that about them. But you also get the genetic combos, kind of like you do with ball pythons, right? So when people are liking to mix stuff, right, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, dude, when I first got into ball pythons, it was like kind of that beginning, like 2007. Like if you got into ball pythons back then and you hit it hard, you should probably be doing really well now, you know, but I was just not interested in them. But to see like the genetics and the combos that were kind of coming from that, you know, it's kind of like we can do something similar, but we don't know how everything works yet. So you either going to you're either going to learn from the people who already did it, or you're going to learn with the people who are doing it now. And that's kind of the train that I wanted to be on, is I want to figure these things out, you know, before everyone else, or have the ability to work with the other people that are figuring it out, and work with them, and, you know, just be on that first card in the train, you know? So.
Okay. Definitely makes a lot of sense. Yeah, man, I'm excited to see what the future has to hold for Amazons. I mean, you know, there are very few species that you can point to with just more overall variability, and in a way where like there's not a phenotype that you could look at as like, all right, well, that is probably the less visually striking one. You know, I guess maybe people would say the gardens, but like I could, you know, see someone making an argument that the gardens are their favorite for the specific reasons that somebody might like that appearance. You know, it feels like there's no lane you could choose and be like, you know, I don't want to say wrong, because it's like there's nothing wrong with keeping reptiles, but like not pick a project that has a lot of future ahead with it.
Well, there's so much project potential within it too, right? You can pick like little things, right? Like, how did people pick all this stuff off of a ball python, right? And figure out how to make all these crazy colors and patterns. There's actually more variability within Amazons originally, right? Before we started really picking things apart, that I feel like we can do more with over time than ball pythons. And ball pythons, we don't see a cap to that either.
Right. So
I'm like, that's what I see. It's like, I see, you know, I'm a type of guy that I'm like, I can see 10 years from now where it's going to look like.
Yeah.
And, people are going to want in 10 years, right? When the work has already been done. And that's fine. I mean, there's going to be plenty of animals for those type of people, you know, but I'm the type of person that I want to kind of carve that path myself.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. So kind of as we're getting towards the later end of the conversation, I want to kind of get to a little bit more of some practical stuff as far as Amazon keeping goes. What do your adult enclosures look like? You know, dimensions, how you have them set up, and then are you running ambient? Are you doing, you know, temperature gradient, hotspot, etc.?
Yeah, for the most part, I like ambient the best. I try to do ambient, a lower ambient. I try to do like a 77, 75. Okay. And then I do have heat on most of my cages and racks. And so what I do there is I just set that heat really low as well. So I'll set it maybe to like an 82. So the room kind of, even if the thermostat is set to 77, if you're having a sunny day outside and you get some light through the window, that room temperature is going to get up warmer than that, you know? And so then the heat tape and stuff like that doesn't even really kick on much. And that's kind of how I like to do it. So, I mean, I try to just have like a fail safe. Like if the temperatures were to all spike on, you know, can my animals like safely get away from, if everything was on full blast, right? And if the room is too hot to begin with, then you're kind of kicking yourself, you know, because once your animals get past that like 95, like that's scary territory, you know. And so for long periods of time, if they can't cool off, they can experience 100-degree temperatures as long as they can cool off, right? And find some kind of shelter from it during the peak points of the hotness. But so I use I do have radiant heat panels in a lot of my cages. I do have a lot of heat tape. To be honest, what I like now is I like to use the Arcadia Jungle Dawns, and they're an LED plant light for Arcadia.
Okay.
They give up quite a bit of heat.
Yeah.
Actually. And so I realized the hard way when I put a radiant heat panel and Arcadia in there, the heat pad never turned on. So I started looking at these lights and I'm like, well, if when the lights turned on, the cage is getting 84 degrees, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So I just have those on a timer, you know? And so I have those on the timer and I use ambient, and that's kind of the way I like to do it because I do like to put plants in my cages.
Okay.
I have all different kinds of cages. There was a guy over in Montana, Big Sky Reptiles, and he did some cages and he made some custom stuff for me. But now most of my cages come from John Poff, who just bought kingsnake.com. Super good guy. And they're like 4x2x2s that he's divided and sliding glass.
Okay.
So just kind of a standard 2x2 cube for most of them. Some of them I have like breeding cages. They're like animal plastic 3x2x2s.
Okay.
The old school ones. Actually, I think a lot of the cages I got were like hand-me-downs. I think those ones came from like Chris Coppell from Headhunters. He used to do a lot of carpet pythons and stuff. Super good guy. But yeah, I mean, just animal plastic. I have some boa files. That's what I keep my Dominicans in. Then I have some like bars cages. I have some what else do I have? There's some like Herptastic or something like that, you know, like there's just some off-brand stuff. But I think going forward, I want to kind of just do the cages from John. I like them. They look nice and clean, easy to access. So I think that's what he's making me another set right now. And I'll have him make another set after that one's done. Once my room is done, and most of my cages will probably be that. But I do like to keep my juveniles in some display cages too.
Okay.
I have like some condos, what they call, some like three compartment condos and 4, so that I can kind of keep the juveniles, the ones that I want to display a little bit. I keep them in the 4 compartment ones, and as they get a little bit bigger, they can go in the 3, and then they're going to go in either like a 64 quart tub. I have animal plastic arboreal, like the old school ones, the arboreal tub racks. And then I have the 2x2 cubes. I have some smaller, like 20 by 20s or 18 by 18s as well. And then the animal plastic 3x2x2s.
Okay. Those condo enclosures, what are the dimensions of like the individual portions?
I would say like, they're all on like a baker's rack. So they're just under 4 foot long.
Okay.
And divided in 4 parts equally. So I would say like the 4-part ones are probably like, I don't know, a little over 10 inches wide by 16 inches tall and maybe, 12 inches deep or something like that.
Okay.
So, and then I have like 4 of those. And then the 3-tiered ones, I think those ones are Big Sky, and they're a little bit bigger. They're just under like, they're just under 18 inches each.
Okay.
So I think they're 16s by, and they're a little taller too. So those ones are like 20 inches tall, and then they're 18 inches deep. I think something like that. Yeah.
And then this question might sound ridiculous, but do the doors slide or swing on those?
The condos, they swing.
Okay, because I had this picture in my mind. I had some friends who had these old cages that they were kind of like what you were describing, but like if the devil made these cages, because they were like 7 inches by like 2 feet by like a foot.
Yeah.
And they had double sliding doors.
So you had to open the doors
to take a water bowl out.
Yeah, no.
I'm like, I would burn this in my yard.
No, I don't like that.
Worst thing ever.
Yeah, no, the sliding glass on the 4x2x2s is not bad because you're just sliding it over, sliding it close, sliding the other one over. So that works out pretty well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would not do it on anything more than 2, something split, you know?
Yeah. No, I have 3x2x2s with the double sliding doors. My 2-foot cages all have swing doors, and yeah, a 2-foot cage with the sliding doors would be terrible as well.
Yeah, no, it's just, and then also like I prefer glass because it never warps and it's easier to clean. But the swing is a little bit more practical, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah. But they all, dude, I don't care what company it is. Like if it's Lexan or if it's, polycarbonate or if it's acrylic or plexi or whatever, they all warp a little bit, and I learned that quickly because I do fish too. Like I have discus fish and stuff. I'm actually building in my office here for construction. I'm building a discus tank into my wall.
Oh,
and
cool.
you realize that like the lids that you use, they have to be glass, because with that much water and heat variability between that, the outside and the inside, they just turn into like a potato chip. Right? They just curl up. And it doesn't matter. Like sometimes the Lexan works a little bit better if it's thicker, but any of the plexi acrylic stuff is all going to curl on you. So that's just how it works. Even if you put it in a frame, I had one guy try to build me a special cage with the PVC frame, and then he slid the Lexan in that, and it's better, but it's still a little bit like when you close the door, you kind of have to just push it a little bit more to latch the thing. You know what I mean? So it's not a big deal, but I do prefer glass.
You have somebody agreeing with you here in the comments. Mr. Python, Jesus himself.
Yeah, Brian's a good guy. And it's just like you realize that over, experience that like plexi is nice because it's lightweight and you can do a lot with it, but you have to buff it if you get scratched up, and you can't do that with the snake in there. Like it's just, there's a lot more to it, right? And if it gets like UV, it could yellow on you or it can get brittle on you.
Yeah, true.
So it's not, I don't like it as much, but the cages going forward, as long as they're adult cages, they'll all get sliding glass, but the smaller cages I'll always do a swing door on those ones, which will be plexi.
Okay. All right. That makes a lot of sense. And then for babies, are you just doing the typical start them in 6 quarts and incrementally move them up, or do you have a different system for babies?
Yeah, no, same system. Use a bow file rack, and I have some animal plastic racks and stuff too, and just keep them 6 quart tubs and move them up. I have I think they're 12s or I think they're 15s. Move them up to the 15s once they get to that size. Or up to that 4-tier condo. That's kind of like they're either going to go down in the 15 quart or they're going to go in that condo. Gotcha. And then from there, I decide like, are these staying or going? And then they'll go down to either a 3-tier condo or they'll go to their own cube.
Makes sense. And I guess kind of on that note, considering the degree of change that occurs with these animals, I mean, how long are you kind of sitting on them to pick your holdbacks typically?
Apparently not long enough.
Okay.
People have tagged me in some stuff and I'm like, damn it. But I mean, that's kind of how it works. I mean, those people kind of become like advertisement for you almost, and they're good people. So I'm glad that, they got some really nice animals. With Amazons, you should probably hold on to them for at least 6 months to 18 months, just depending on what you're looking for. You can usually tell quickly if the snake is not going to go the direction you're looking for. Sometimes you can't really tell if the snake is going to go a direction that you're going to be interested in until later on too, though, when you have a red, the problem is like, some of those crazy phenotype ones that you're looking at, they started just as red with white stripes or red with black stripes. Yeah. Then over time they change and it takes them, about 18 months, 2 years before you start to see a lot of that stuff come in. And then you're like, dang, you know, I'm glad I have this one or kept this or I bought this, you know, it's like, you know, and so you want to keep them for a minimum 6 months, I'd say, and maximum probably like 18 months to really know what you're going to get. I try not to hold on to everything.
Yeah.
Just because I don't have a ton of room, right? I'm just kind of a little hobbyist breeder. And I don't have time to have a whole bunch of them. So I'd rather them go into other people's hands that are going to do good things with them. And then that ultimately just it creates advertisement for you as well.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any things that you kind of picked up on over time that you can pinpoint? All right, once I see this little change at 4 or 5 months or whatever, I can kind of know, all right, this is where with this particular morph or whatever, all right, this baby's probably going in the direction I want. Like every letters you kind of pick up on more.
Yeah, every phenotype is going to be a little different.
Sure.
You know, you can, when they're first born, sometimes they look like they almost have like little gray like spotting or like circles on them, and then they kind of like have their first or second shed and that goes away, and then you kind of see like, okay, well, after that first and second shed, you're like, okay, what is it that I have here? It's going to be, you know, just some red animals. Sometimes the tiger stripes are super faint. It's hard to see those until a couple sheds, maybe even a handful of sheds, you know, and then you start to look like, okay, are white scales coming in? Or, you know, I have like I have a snake. I think I got it from Godbold. It was like yellow, right? And it's getting all of this orange and red, and, you know, it doesn't even look like it would have started yellow, you know? And so you just, the longer you can hold them, the better. It's kind of very similar to green tree pythons, right? But you can't hold everything. And so I just try to pick like, okay, I think this one's going in the direction I really like the crazy looking calico stuff. So if I see some calicos in there that stand out from the rest, those are usually the ones that I'm holding back. Unfortunately, those are usually the ones that have feeding problems too, you know? I think last year I made one that looked what they call like blonde kind of.
Okay.
But it was born with its yolk sac not fully absorbed, and did get it to absorb fully, and did get, I think I got a couple of quail heads in it, and then it passed. The year before that, I produced a really extreme red calico baby, and you can tell it was going to be like an extreme one, and then it had some like pied blotching on it as well. That's probably on my Instagram too. There's little pictures of that one. Very unique.
Would it be further down?
Yeah, okay.
Further
down. I'll tell you, keep going.
Yeah, very curious to see this.
Yeah, there you go. In the middle.
Yeah, okay. Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty extreme.
Mm-hmm. But you can see there's some problems with that animal. Like it had like a small little cleft lip.
Yeah.
And then it had a small kink by the tail. And so, you know, just talking to Nick, he's the pessimist you want to talk to and stuff like this. And he's just like, the animal just didn't develop the color. You know, I'm like, are you sure it's not a pied? And he's like, all calicos are pied, you idiot. You know, like, you know, and so it just kind of snaps you back into reality. It's like, okay, no, I needed to hear that. So, you know, people are like, oh, wow, that's pied. And I'm like, technically, like every calico is a form of piebaldism.
Yeah.
Nick can go in on that one hard if you ever wanted to inquire about that kind of stuff. But yeah. So, I mean, I have animals pop out like that. They're really cool, but sometimes those are the ones that don't do it, you know? So,
yeah, it always seems to go that way.
It does.
I'm not even sure if I've mentioned this on here or not. Maybe I have, but last year I hatched out a barneck scrub that 99% sure was a T positive albino.
Oh shit.
And it was like a half-sized baby, bug-eyed, poor. It like fully herniated umbilicus. It lived like 2 weeks.
sucks, man. It's like you want to try to do everything to save it, but at the same time,
Yeah.
you want to like keep reproducing these like fucked up little snakes, you know. And it's so pretty, you know.
And then, but my thought was like, all right, is this a caramel albino or is this an underdeveloped baby? Because I really hope it's the second one. Because
if you talk to those guys too, they'll tell you, you know, like the color is one of the last things to form in the baby, you know. So a lot of times when there's problems with, you know, that clutch or litter, the color could be linked to other bigger problems that are going on too, you know, like, hey, maybe it didn't, one of its organs aren't developed, and it's associated to this piebaldism or whatever it is, or leucistic, you know, it has bug eyes and, you know, has a neurological problem or whatever, you know.
Yeah, I was lucky. The other 4 offspring from the clutch were perfect and huge, and they're doing fantastic. So that's all great. But yeah, and it was funny. I was in Florida for Daytona when the baby came out. My dad sent me a picture. I'm looking at this thing like, no way.
Like, it probably just stood out from all the other ones too.
Well, and also like I felt like I was in like the 80s or something getting a photo in the mail because my dad has a phone from like 2001.
Right.
So the picture was very poor just because it's an old phone. And I saw this thing and I'm like, I feel like I got like a postcard from Noah from Africa with like the first caramel albino ball python. I'm like, oh my gosh, no way. And then I got home and I'm like, oh, this thing is like a third of the size of its siblings. All right, whatever.
Damn it.
Fuck. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I had a really nice calico produced this year too, and I was like, oh, whoa, that one's sweet. You know, it's like not pied like that one, but it was really like extreme looking. And I go in there and its yoke is underneath its body and it's all kinked up. And I'm like, God damn it, dude. It's always the nice ones.
Yeah.
So that's just how it works.
To kind of hit a trade story for story, I had another really crazy barneck that was like, it was like dark purple when it hatched. And it had a sibling that was like not quite as extreme as it, but still had that. I still have that snake now. But this thing was like kinked tail, born prolapsed, and it took one meal, prolapsed again, died kind of thing. Yeah. But I'm like, this is like literally I hatched a purple baby. Because the other one was kind of like
it's like, hey, this is what the snake could look like. Just kidding. It's going to be gone soon.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck. All right. Well, I got to try to, you know, and then you're like, okay, so that was this pairing. And all right, so I'm going to try this again. And yeah. And then something happens or whatever, you know, like that pied one, you know, Hellboy passed away. And I was like, no, because the animal I held back from that litter was another female, you know. I was like, damn it. But that's how it works.
Yep. Yeah. And I unfortunately am not able to redo either of these pairings that produce these crazy ass babies, but
yeah, that sucks, man. That's probably how it works, you know.
Yeah. What I mean, at least with the purple one, I have the sibling that had the kind of like weird color. Okay. And then I actually hatched one from a fully unrelated pairing that with some size, like they both kind of look like a patternless axanthic, like a very low pattern axanthic. So I'm like, sick. All right, I'll do that. But yeah, the caramel albino looking, I just really hope it was just a baby that didn't fully develop color.
Yeah, you want to think that. And then,
let's just go with that.
Yeah. And so that's like when I was talking to Nick, he's like, that animal's not, you know, it's like, all right, well, I wanted to believe it was a piebald, but you know, he's like, I bet because it has a cleft lip, it was just underdeveloped and it's pigment. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right, man. You know, it's like, it is what it is. You know, just try, keep going, keep trying stuff and see what happens.
It's all you can do. And, you know, the journey is where the fun is with this. The destination doesn't ultimately.
Well, there's never going to be a destination.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't even define that.
Yeah. No, I'm just going to keep breeding them, have a good time, you know, and if I get bored or tired or whatever, I'll just sell off the ones that I don't want as pets, you know, and just enjoy them and keep them. And So
Yeah,
I love it.
Absolutely. Well, as we're kind of winding down here, I really appreciate you taking this time tonight, man.
No, I appreciate having me on, man.
Yeah, I love getting to talk to you. So I guess at this point, what's kind of your vision for your operation, your collection? Do you have a point where you're like, all right, this is where I want it to get to, and I'm going to be kind of happy there? Or do you kind of have a mindset of just, this is always developing, and if I need to change my mind or I want to, then I'll do that?
Yeah, I mean, I like to have things that I don't have at the moment, right? I mean, I think we all kind of like that. So when I produce animals or I see animals that like I don't have, I get that itch that I want it. I'm trying to stick with a lot of the extreme calico stuff. That's kind of where I want to kind of stay. Is like, hey, I really want to just kind of get that and just run with it, see how it goes. Like I said, I try to produce under a handful of litters a year. But as my kids get older and, eventually they start to be more independent, and then I decide what I want to do with my businesses, right? Working on repairing a business, working on a brand new business, and they're both doing really well. But, eventually I'm going to get to a point where if you talk to any true business person, it's nonstop. It's like fight or flight all the time. Like, there's always going to be crisis. Like, you're always putting out fires. So I know I'm not going to do it forever. So hopefully eventually I can sell those businesses and I can just kind of play with the snakes. And then, I don't know, maybe work for someone else part-time or something like that. But I'd like to do that, is just focus on the calico stuff, see where that goes. Because there's like, I can have a room full of calico Amazon tree boas and every single one look different. Just from like those 3 or 4 that you looked at, you could see the variability with just
wildly different.
So you can get the light ones or the dark ones or the clean ones. You can get calicos that look like they have some bicolor influence in there too. Like, so there's a lot of directions that I think we can go. I think the more people that jump in and just do 1 or 2 projects here and there with the Amazons, then we can kind of just take all that information and see. It's just going to help progress the hobby and the Amazons and the genetics behind that. So that's what I'm sticking around for, is kind of saying like, okay, definitively we know now that this is this and that equals this, and go from there.
Cool, man. Well, I'm very excited to keep up with everything you have going on and see how what the future has to hold. But for anybody who doesn't already follow you, keep up what you're doing, what are the best ways to find you on the old internet?
Yeah, I mean, the best way really is Instagram. I do most of my snake stuff on there. Okay. I try not to really do a ton of other stuff. You'll see some family stuff, kid sports in my stories sometimes, but mainly my Instagram, Randall Pegues, is where I do all my snake stuff. If you try to follow me on Facebook, we have to have a lot of mutual friends. If we have mutual friends, then I'll probably accept it. Because I do have people that like reach out to me on Facebook that don't have Instagram and stuff like that. And that's fine. But I prefer to not do as much snake stuff on Facebook.
Sure. Makes sense. All right, cool. Well, man, once again, thank you so much for taking the time tonight. This was a really awesome conversation. I very much enjoyed.
I appreciate it, man. I had a good time.
Hell yeah. Glad to hear it. Well, once again, thank you. And thank you to everybody who tuned in tonight. Catch you all back